All right. So welcome everyone today. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I'm really excited to have Mark MacDonald from Core Venture and Maddie Pardue on the line with me today. We've been getting to know each other through the Trusted Family and the Core Venture platforms for a little over a year now. So I'm very excited that we're finally able to make this webinar happen today. It's going to be a really great conversation talking about a really very, very important topic to a lot of people who are joining in today. So just really quick, we're going to kind of do a tour around the table just so you guys know who you have here on the call and a little bit about our backgrounds. So I'm Katie Darnell, Business Development Director for Trusted Family in the US and Canada. I've been with Trusted Family for about 3 years now. And I also am from a family business. So I'm a fourth gen rising gen in a frozen vegetable company based in Tennessee here in the US. And so I will also kind of have my rising gen hat on during this call today. And yeah, so Mark, I'll let you say a little bit about yourself, please.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for the invitation. This is a lot of fun. It's been great to be able to get to know trusted families as well. Just the synergy is growing. So, as Katie said, my name is Mark MacDonald. I'm the CEO of Core Venture. Thankfully, I've been with the team for about 20 months now. So I'm fairly new and in comparison to some of the other team members. I came to Core through a variety of different ways, but through a common passion point. I just love the element of this next generation and the young leaders that are coming out of it. Spent numerous times with the elements of, how do you encourage them to a new level of themselves through intrinsic motivation, through the element of being purpose driven, and also working with some elements of their families as well. So this is fun for me. It's almost a dream come true to be able to talk to you about Core, because it's almost a fulfillment to what I hoped I was going to do at some point in my life, which was just to get a chance to be able to encourage these leaders that are just absolutely incredible when you get to know them and understand the ways that they want to be able to change their world. So thank you, Katie. It's wonderful to be with Maddie too, just because she's been part of our process and she's just one of my favorite people in the world.
That's sweet. Yeah, I'm Maddie Pardue, also a rising gen. And because of that, back in 2019, I found Core Venture and went through some of their programming. And honestly, it was life changing for me. So much so that I started working for them a few years later, and through that experience was introduced to Trusted Family and knew that my family office needed their platform, and so we've been using their platform for about a year now. It's been amazing, and so I get the privilege of knowing both Core and Trusted Family. I have since left Core Venture and am now full-time momming with a 6-month-old. So great to be here, Katie. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you, Maddie, for taking time to do this. Your story is really great, as everyone here will learn by the end of the hour. And so we very much appreciate you bringing that perspective here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep. So we do have some slides we're going to share to kind of help us walk through some different points of view and different things that the Core Venture process to kind of help us walk through that. So we're going to cue that up really quick. This is the title and the title of our presentation today, Empowering the Rising Generation to Use Their Own Vibrancy, Voice, and Vision. I think all three of those words are very important, and we're going to speak to a lot of that today. But I think it's important for us to kind of start with thinking about how when you grow up in a family of wealth or any significant means like that, it can be a very conflicting experience. And that could be spoken in your family or it could go unspoken. That can be a very hard thing to discuss within your own family and definitely outside of the family. And that can cause some some confusion and some conflict for especially a rising generation when they're trying to navigate life and figure out who they are and what roles they're going to play now and in the future. I think from a trusted family perspective, a lot of our clients that we get to work with all of the time, they always come to us and say, you know, one of our projects is we're going to work on developing the next generation. And I think that word developing can oftentimes not really capture what it is you're trying to do for the rising generation or what you need from them or what they are expecting from their experience within their own families. Oftentimes thinking of it that way, it's a very top-down approach. It's more about we have a position or a vacancy and we need someone to fit into that position. It often becomes about being financially literate or, you know, knowing about governance or succession. And oftentimes you kind of jump and miss the whole, well, why are we doing this? Who are the people behind this? Who are we really looking to as leaders down the road? And who are they as people and individuals first? And I think that Core Venture is one of those very special organizations that kind of flips that script on its head and really starts to put the rising generation at the forefront of that conversation first, so that everything that flows down the line in the larger context of the family legacy is a little bit better and more rewarding of a process for everyone involved. So the first thing we're going to do, I'll give just a little bit of background on Trusted Family for those that are not familiar with us, and then we're going to let Mark talk through Core Venture, who they are, some of the way they kind of look at this rising generation challenge and opportunity, and then Maddie's going to start to kind of bring her experience when she worked for Core and actually going through the Core process on her own. Perfect. So for those of you that are not familiar with Trusted Family, really quick, our story and background lines up perfectly with this Rising Gen conversation. We were founded by two Rising Gen co-founders in their own family businesses based in Belgium about 15 years ago. The initial platform was built as a project for their own families, and they themselves as Rising Gens noticed there were some communication challenges, information sharing issues within their own complexity of their families, and they took it upon themselves to build this product to kind of help solve that problem. So right there, Trusted Family was launched from a Rising Gen initiative. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here at Trusted Family, we also continue that Rising Gen legacy. We have a lot of Rising Gens that work for our company. I think that a rising generation understands the importance of technology and having a digital footprint and how that can help your family, as Maddie can attest to. And so that we have a lot of Rising Gens that are involved in this process. Just to really speak to the vision of Trusted Family down the road, we are hoping to grow from being a communication platform to becoming the central operating system for the family business and family office. And that will kind of happen in three parts. We have our software platform, our TF 2.0, which we are calling it now. We've launched a new version of the platform with a very modern look and feel, improved mobile experience. And then we couple that with our success team who helps drive best practices, helps build out your platform to customize it to your family. And then we also have our Trusted Family community, where we're able to pull in people like Mark and Maddie to speak to their experience and enhance what's going on the software platform even more. So that's a little bit about Trusted Family. If you have any questions, there's will be a website link in the chat. You can always reach out to us. Our contact information will be at the end. And then last, I will mention this. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put that in the chat. We will answer them at the end. We're going to kind of go through our material and tell our stories and all of that, and then we'll get back to your questions at the end. So if you think of anything, please put that in the chat. And with that, Mark, I'll let you kind of kick us off with Core Venture.
Okay, great. Thank you, Katie. As Katie just presented, what's fun about Core is we do get a chance to be able to almost do a bottom-up experience of being able to take a picture of a Rising Gen like Maddie and bring them into our environment where it's a safe, it's an accepting kind of environment, and allowing them to begin to just walk through a process of formation with them. Since the inception, Katie asked me to talk a little bit about just how we have evolved, because we've had an interesting story, especially in the midst of the pandemic. But our founders, some wonderful leaders, got together and started to recognize some of the trends that were coming down with the huge wealth transfer that was coming about, as well as just recognizing some of the family dynamics with some of those rising gens that were coming up into the families, and recognizing that there needed to be a process where there could be some anchoring taking place, that the identity process was going to be so critical as the element of wealth was coming into that family, and defining them in a different way, or defining them in a way where it wasn't necessarily clear on who they were, or what kind of process they could develop to finding even more of themselves, or for that matter, the kind of impact they could create. So these wonderful leaders started Core Venture, and it was primarily built off this statement. This has not changed really since inception that much. We just keep on learning for it. So Core Venture is about encouraging and shaping a rising gen's identity. As you guys know, it's not next gen as much any longer. The new phrasing is rising gen's identity, character, their inner purpose and well-being as they navigate through the complexities and joys of abundance and key relationships within their family. The evolution of this statement takes a little bit more of a weightedness in it, as we've recognized that we've developed a real strong process for being able to create this understanding of who these rising gens are. But as you'll hear through this conversation that we have today, we're recognizing even the chance that we have to enhance those relationships, especially within the family. The key relationships, especially with the Gen Zs that we'll talk about, is becoming even more and more important as we kind of build bridges of relationship and conversation between the moms and dads, the FO executives, as well as just the rising gens coming up in the family. Those wonderful leaders that we were just talking about, the process of trying to identify what was best for developing the why and encouraging and shaping next gens to thrive were really based on 4 different areas of need. They recognized the rising gens were unclear about their strengths, identity, and purpose, that they were uncertain about the emerging world and their role in it. They had unanswered questions and confusion about their family, their wealth, and the relational challenges that can emerge. And most importantly was the idea and the understanding that they felt isolated from authentic community. You know, as Katie just stated, and Maddie, I'm certain will communicate this in a second as well, that the big opportunity was putting them in a peer environment where all of a sudden they had somebody that was just like them, was talking like them, dealing with some of the other issues. And the most important of all these 4 points in terms of how the founders wanted to kind of build on this idea was that how do we take them out of that isolation and bring them into some level of community where they can learn from each other, encourage each other with an environment that actually has a development process. That was wonderful in terms of getting it started. And as they went through 1 cohort as well as 2 cohorts, everything was going real well. And then unfortunately the pandemic took place. And this particular cohorts that was started around 2020, it was a 3 international city tour, so to speak. So 4 to 5 months of being able to walk through an experience together, but it was based on 3 different cities and international destinations. So when the pandemic came, that kind of put a little bit of a damper on things. So we stepped back. That's when I had the opportunity to come in as well. And we recognized, as a board as well as a team, that we got to be able to find some ways to be able to take a different kind of scale. How do we take this process and make it that much more relevant, accessible, flexible? But we recognize that even in the first 1 or 2 cohorts, the amount of transformation that was taking place was exactly what we were hoping for. So we actually said let's just take a look at our folks, our alumni like the Maddies of the world, and find out what is really working for them. Why is there such a significant amount of transformation that took place? So the board allowed us to, with a PhD, to do some research and identify what were the strengths, the outcome, the indicators that really drove that element of transformation. And can we begin to replicate that, but at a scale that was more affordable, less cost, but also do it in a way that could also be virtual or destination based. So we did that and came up with 52 different indicators, and that has been kind of a guiding force for us as we've been able to shape our processes, which we'll share with you today. What's unique now is that we do have the flexibility, we do have the accessibility, and now we can begin to invite folks into a process that has a lot more a chance for them to be a part of, especially thankfully the pandemic's over as well. So we're an evidence-based and strength-based process now, which is giving us even that much more freedom to be able to develop certain specific pathways for individuals, as well as we're starting to get into some family elements too. But that's a little bit of a tease, but I'd like to just turn it over to Maddie just to talk a little bit about her why. What was it about CORE? Why did she get involved? The opportunities that she saw within it. Just let her tell a little bit of her story and how that evolved.
Hey, Maddie, you're muted.
Thank you. I was just saying, I think for this slide, there should be a picture of me because I am the poster child for all of these points, especially the last one, just feeling really isolated from within my family situation. So growing up in a family of wealth for me was extremely isolating. I didn't grow up within like a wealthy community, and so we definitely stuck out. And kids can be really mean about that, even though my parents went about it really well. But I never had a community that I could talk to about these complexities of wealth. And so what I would find myself doing is just trying to sweep things under the rug and try to minimize, comments, or just try to distance myself as much as possible from my family situation. And that didn't serve me well because the reality of it was my reality. And so I was feeling pretty lost and disengaged. And maybe the people listening to this webinar, you relate yourself or you work with rising gens who feel really passive. And it could be my situation where I was so overwhelmed and I felt really isolated and alone in my situation. And so I didn't even know how to engage. Um, and so back in 2019, it was my mom who actually heard about Core Venture that was up and coming at the time. And she told me to check out the website, and I did. And at the time, like Mark was saying, it was this 3-country immersive experience. And it sounded amazing. We got to hear from all of these incredible speakers. We were within a small community of rising gens. And I looked at it and I told her, absolutely not. I would never do anything like that because that would label me as a rising gen. And I'm trying to, remove myself from this label as much as possible. Through a series of events, I finally came to the point where I said, I do think I need this because at the end of the day, this is my life, this is my reality, and ignoring this is not going to serve me well for the rest of my life. Like I want to feel more empowered. I want to take some ownership of this in a way that's still authentic to who I am. And so I ended up going through the immersive experience, and it was so life-changing for me. And that sounds extreme, but it is true. It was truly transformative from the inside out. because of the way Core Venture is structured, it does focus on identity and well-being and thriving. And my initial reasons that I went to Core Venture changed. I was thinking, I had the assumption that what I needed in my life to feel like I could take more ownership of, this reality of family business, family office was, I need more financial literacy. I need more knowledge. If I know, all of these tax terms that my advisors are using, I'm going to feel, confident. I'm going to feel like I have a place at the table. And that's not true. And that's, not what I got at Core, which I'm so grateful, because what I actually needed was I needed to finally come to the place within myself where I was confident in who I was, and I knew that my voice mattered, and I found an inner strength in my own, personality and the ways that I was wired, my giftings. And throughout Core Venture, you work with a personal coach. And so that person was really able to, see that in me and draw that in me. And I was able to find more of my voice that then I was able to use in my family setting. And so that's a little snapshot of me. I don't know, Mark, if you want me to go into any more details on anything else, but when I was working for Core, I would had this phrase of, to me, in my mind, it makes sense if you compare it to the old adage of, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he eats for a lifetime. It makes sense in my mind the same way of, like, if you give a rising gen, all of these, knowledge and tax terms, like, they're going to be fine. Like, they're going to feel competent maybe in a meeting or know what's going on a little bit more. But if you give them an experience of really diving into their identity and transforming their sense of self and their strengths, knowing that at a deep personal level, that's going to permeate throughout their whole life into all sectors of their life. And that's when you'll really see a sense of ownership and difference in them. In me, I can say that because that happened to me. So
Yeah.
that's yeah, Mark, anything else?
No, you will begin to find some other wonderful hooks in some of our slides coming up here. But I think the thing that Maddie is just exhibiting here is the power of story, her story. And I think that's what Core is about, is that folks come in and they begin to define themselves, but they start developing their own story. It's a little bit what Katie was saying in the beginning, is that we allow the element of what the strengths are, and that inner type of purpose and the inner type of identity that Maddie's talking about, and allowing that to bubble up, just allowing them to discover it, and be able to apply it to some element of the world. So what's wonderful is that Maddie's just the wonderful testimony of what that story continues to look like now, being a mom and still growing within that. Jumping back into this. So the elements of, Katie had asked us, what are the ways that we can encourage you with what we understand, and just in terms of our process as folks are coming into Core. This is the foundation. I won't use the word core again, but this is the foundation for how we actually see folks coming in, as well as how we start to work with them. They're asking questions, the simple questions of identity, of element of purpose, impact, character. Who am I? Of course, all of us ask that question. But the other part of the rising gen coming in, typically we have a range of 21 to 35. They're dealing with net worth, wealth, usually around 50 million and above. But they're all dealing with this beginning of the story. Who am I, and who am I separate from the wealth? And what our process begins to do is allow them that freedom to be able to take that object of wealth and put it into on the table, and just be able to review it, understand a little bit more what it does to define them from an inner standpoint, from a purpose standpoint, from all the different elements that we've talked about today, character and all. And what that process then, what that lens that gets created is walking through our, what we call our pathways. That, so how do I belong within this context, within my family, within the relationships that I have, with the element of wealth in my world? And how can I find meaning with that? How do I relate to it? How do I relate to my family? And how does this also begin to give me a sense of impact that I can have within the world? The interesting challenge that's taking place, especially now as Gen Zs come into our world, is that we're recognizing that the emotional connection and disconnections that this Gen Z is dealing with today is much deeper than some of our previous millennials that have come through our process. They're dealing with much deeper kind of issues and concerns for the world, concerns for their own processing of life, their own ability to understand what their role is within the family, their role within life and a career, or whatever the case may be. So what we do is we begin to help the advisors or families, as well as the rising gens, understand some of the challenges that come with that, as well as just with their parents. And so we've kind of consolidated this particular story here, but what we begin to realize is that there is some barriers to how a founding gen see the wealth, and then how a rising gen sees the wealth. So a founding gen sees the wealth. What do I do with my wealth? Where Maddie and the other rising gens coming in are asking questions, the Gen Zs especially, what do I do with my life? Where the founding gens are saying, how do I create meaning from what I've built? A rising gen is asking questions, well, how do I create a meaningful life, especially with the wealth? What will my legacy be? A founding gen might say. Well, how do I make a difference in the world? And what's that story to be able to start creating that difference? How do I give back? How will I matter? What's the convergent point here is that we all want to live a purposeful and fulfilled life, to feel like we matter and we can make a difference. That's the point of awareness where we start, is that how can we begin to help that rising gen begin to clarify and define the elements of who they are and bring meaning to it. What's a challenge, and probably very relevant for many of you that are on this Zoom today, is that the advisor sits in the middle of this. And it can be complex, it can be very challenging to deal with these different mindsets and approaches, how the founding gen might see the family, as well as just the family wealth as well. And then the rising gens coming up with a different kind of vision or mission, that vision, vibrancy, as well as just all the different elements that they might see life in a different way. So this is a new age of wealth and awareness and meaning. The element of our sweet spot, which we have, which is part of our 52 indicator outcomes as well, is that we at the core have those things that we've already talked about: identity, character, purpose, and strengths. But that concentric circle allows us to be able to begin to look at what are the family strengths and flourishing, as well as what's the rising gen strengths and thriving. And we're learning more and more how to be able to converge those. So as a rising gen comes into an experience of understanding themselves, they can also begin to look at the ways that they can encourage their family in the same kind of vein. And we have some tools that are beginning to reveal that process as well. So what are my inner strengths? Identity and purpose. That comes with voice. My vision, how can I bring purpose and meaning to myself with the wealth? And then vibrancy, how can I and our family flourish together and create impact? This is, Maddie mentioned this, so it's an inward outward model. We start right off the bat of just being able to allow that freedom to start a story. And then that grows from the element outward to a point of purpose and impact as they walk through a process. So what does that process look like? This is what we call the pathway. It's built on 4 essential questions. And this in a sense is the way that somebody comes into our process from the get-go. We start with what's called a jump start. This is a 6 to 8 hour one-day experience, typically with 3 to 5 other rising gens. And what we're dealing with there is just, number one, building that connection that goes back to the issue of alienation and just allowing them to take that whole isolation out of the picture and bringing friends and connections into what it really means to start this process of finding yourself with the wealth. Then that jump start, it's really kind of a taster. We call it a taster just because it gives you a sense as well as a level of comfort and acceptance of just wanting to be in a process where you can be free to be yourself. You can be free to be able to discover the elements who we are. And the next part of this piece here, where we get to live to be true, is asking questions about identity. This is our longer term process, which is 4 to 5 months, and you have a coach. So the jump start is a 6 to 8 hour, 1 day experience. And if you feel good about what you're learning about yourself, just even in that period of time, then you can begin to jump into this 4 to 5, much more introspective and reflective process with a coach, as well as just with your other fellow rising gens. So we start off with live to be true. Who am I really? That's a discovery of self, character, your wiring. We have various tools for that. And then as that begins to be defined in a way where the inner self is starting to come up and self-awareness is being revealed, then we move to that the third part, which is how do I make sense of my purpose? This begins to bring vision as well as just a view of the world and how they could have some level of purpose within it, and what drives the element of that purpose. And then lastly, we deal with the issue of live with impact. How do I make a difference, recognizing and contributing to what matters to me? So the blue sections in here are 4 to 5 months of just being able to work with your coach, work with your fellow rising gens in intermittent type of sessions, and start to build that story in the way that you're starting to see the elements of who you are and what you could actually become. This is also coach driven. So you're given a coach throughout the whole process, and they're walking through and helping you build elements of what you believe your plan could be, as well as what you're wanting to make certain habits or goals and drive that as well. So with that, one of the pieces that we've realized, I mentioned before, that the whole idea of how families are coming into this process and seeing the elements of the Maddies being transformed, we're recognizing different ways that we can begin to also incorporate the larger family within the context. So this is a model of what we actually do. You'll see the rising gen strengths and flourishing. That's the pathway and the jumpstart. And now we're offering a chance for families to also jump into what they're seeing with their rising gen development. And we have what we call a family strengths indicator. And this something that we just started. You know, Katie's gotten a chance to take a taste of it as well. Maybe she can give some thoughts to it in a second. But what we're doing is we're trying to bring that whole idea of reflection that the rising gens that get through core, and then also give a chance for the whole family to be able to take an indicator and see where the elements of purpose strength, character strength, relational strength, contribution strength, financial and governance strength, with the hope and goal that as this indicator can converge and build elements of insights to where all the family members might think and be, we can begin to have wonderful conversations around. So where do we want to grow? What are the strengths that we actually want to enhance within our world? We might be really strong in purpose. So what are the ways that we can accentuate that even more? Katie, do you want to comment at all? Just your thought around it?
Yeah. I did have the opportunity to take the family strengths assessment. And it's a questionnaire, I guess. How many questions were on there? I think
76, yeah.
Okay. And when you're done with it, it kind of gives you a roll up of strengths from your own perspective of where your family kind of lays and where you kind of fit into that. Again, kind of anchoring back to that, identity and kind of how you view yourself in the larger context of your own family and the wealth and everything. It kind of gives it more from the entire family lens, so that you kind of know, okay, well, this is where I sit now, and how can I grow, and in what direction can I go? What are my strengths already, and then where can I improve? And I think that it gives you a really good baseline to kind of understand that, while you're also developing some of these key identity pieces as a rising gen. I think also wanted to mention too, so I've had the privilege of getting to do not even quite the jump start. I think it's half of a jump start. There was a Kickstarter program that I was fortunate to get to go through, and Maddie was actually the moderator, the leader of that half-day event for my small little cohort of people. And so I've just had just a small taste of the core venture process, and even just from that one half day of going through that process, I can speak to from my own experience that I wish I had been aware of core venture at a much younger age, because I think all of those different points have been incredibly relevant for me too. Similar to Maddie, I grew up without not really having a community of other rising gens from wealth, and that isolation piece is definitely something that is part of my story, and I'm still trying to figure out ways to understand it, and interested personally in going through this full process to kind of see how my own identity can come to light as I go through the process. But I do think that just from going through that process with Maddie leading it, I think just from a very simple kind of how that program started is, I do remember going back to that first question, Mark, that you had here: who are you, or who am I with the wealth or without the wealth? I remember, Maddie, and you may can speak to it a little bit more, but you said, take this like image of the wealth or whatever and park it over here, put it behind you, like it's here, but we're going to remove it. We're going to kind of put it in the background as we go through this process today. And I remember that very simple exercise, I felt like a weight kind of lifted off of me, of like, okay, we're going to put it over here where it belongs. And while we're talking through this and doing this, it's going to be, we'll come back to that later, and we'll deal with it later. And I thought just that image and that process of acknowledging it and putting it out of the way for a little bit kind of gave me room to speak more freely during that process. And also, I think one of the other really powerful things about core venture is that it puts rising gens in a very safe space immediately. Like, you kind of come into it and you're like, you pretty quickly understand that the people in the room know exactly what you've been through, and you feel very safe talking and being open and honest in a way that you cannot find and cannot replicate in other avenues.
Yeah. What's neat about it too is just exhibiting in your story there, is that we're recognizing, there's been plenty of parents that came up to us, that have watched their son or daughter go through the experience, like the pathway or the immersive, and say, I wish there was a core around when I was a kid that would have helped me deal with the elements of this wealth, and try to understand, how to be able to navigate through it all. So we also recognize that there's some wonderful challenges that are coming up, the big wealth transfer, and how a family is coming around that, and also trying to understand how does that rising gen come into the family in a way where there is continuity, there's a common vision, there's also an element of leadership that's being framed and formed as they grow into a leadership role within the family. I also say that one of the other reasons why we've been developing this is the growth of the family office, and how tremendous it is, because this tool could be a great encouragement to an advisor or a family office, an executive, as you begin to start setting priorities and opportunities for where you want to start building an element of strength within that family, and begin to also bring that voice and vision of that rising gen into that process as well. So that's why we've been looking at that family strength piece. We believe that it will only encourage flourishing families as we kind of walk along down the road here. Maddie, I asked you to be able to tell that story about your friend. You've been out of core for a while. and then you had your baby, but you had an interesting conversation the other day with her, and I thought that was really wonderful. Could you share that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really neat experience that just happened maybe 2 weeks ago. So I've definitely been in baby land and not have had a lot of time for introspection, but I reconnected with an old family friend. I haven't seen her in about a decade. So, she hasn't seen me go through a lot of my life. I think I last saw her right after high school. And so I was talking with her, sharing, as best I could, kind of an update of the last decade of going to college and after college and getting married and having a baby. And she just paused and she said, "This is a really strong Maddie that I'm experiencing right now." And I had known her when I was in middle school and high school, and she just briefly touched on like often gave way for your sisters, to kind of be the spotlight, but this is a very strong Maddie that I'm experiencing, and I love it. This is who you are. And I just said thank you, and because I could feel that, I honestly felt just more confident and self-assured. And so I started thinking back, I was like, when did that happen? I was like, okay, definitely not college. I was a total mess. Maybe after, oh my goodness, it was 2019. It was when I went through Core Venture. So I got to tell her about that, and I can really see that now looking back as a very pivotal moment in my life because um kind of what Katie touched on before, I should have mentioned this before, but my biggest takeaway and what I think really gave me a lot of confidence, my biggest takeaway from Core was that it was the first time in my life that I was interacting with other rising gens. And you could visibly, when we all got together, there was a group of 6 of us, you could visibly see this weight being lifted off of our shoulders of, oh my goodness, we can talk about this. We can talk about the complexities of wealth because the world sees the complexities of wealth. It's like, oh, darn, what are you going to do with all that money? And it's so much deeper than that. It's how do I, think about my purpose? And, when there's either extremes of I have to go into the family business or I have every option in the world and I have no idea what to do, or how do I navigate dating, or how do I navigate friendships? And, how do I have this really difficult conversation with my dad of, who's, has these expectations of me, or, what have you. And so, it was the first time that, this, small group of people, we were all able to just talk freely with no judgment. And that gave me just so much confidence knowing, my goodness, I'm actually not alone. Like this area of my life that was so incredibly burdensome before, it was because I was trying to navigate it by myself. And so to have a group of people that I was now able to do that with, my confidence just soared. And so I think that was my biggest takeaway of like, man, yeah, the things in this life that feel burdensome are only a burden if you do it alone. And now I have this community, this group, Core Venture, that we're, diving into these complexities together. And yeah, I just grew so much in my own strength, in my own voice. So much so that, a few years down the line, I was the one that brought to my family office, hey, I think we would really benefit from this trusted family platform. Whereas that sounds simple maybe, but if you would have known me before, I was trying to like be as invisible as possible in my family office setting. And so, um, that was really cool. But anyway, all that to say is it was really meaningful for me that the family friend who hadn't seen me in years could visibly see that change. And I definitely attribute that to my experience with Core Venture.
Yeah, that's great, Maddie. Thank you. The fun part for just core is that it's almost peeling the onion. It is as you come in, it's what you make of it and what you do actually together. And so that the element of just being able to bubble up, the kind of the insights that Maddie's even talking about and what Katie's talking about, where all of a sudden you see new elements of yourself that you never saw before, and you can bring that element of strength and the anchoring in such a way where some of the other complexities that you're dealing with the wealth or with family relationships or whatever, at least you have something to be able to grab a hold of what that handle is. So the elements of where we are right now, Katie wanted us to share a little bit about where we're going. Yeah, share again, sorry. With our programs. If you're an advisor, if you're a parent, if you're a rising gen on the line here, this is ways that you can begin to jump into the core venture. You know, that taster, the jump start, I'm going to give you my email address at the end here. If you're interested, if you have a rising gen or as an advisor, you want to know a little bit more about how you might want to get some of the other family members, or for that matter, even start to have conversations with parents, I'm happy to do that. We do that all the time. But the jumpstart, closest one will be April 20th, and then we're also going to do one in mid-May. Those are typically, as I said before, 3 to 5 people. The first one is going to be virtual, so it does give a little bit more freedom and flexibility. That's the 6 to 8 hour taster experience that allows you also just to be able to, get not only have a taste of it, but be able to ask questions and be able to start looking with your coach at some areas that you might even want to start developing yourself. So it's all just a chance to be able to touch it and taste it a little bit. Prior to the Jumpstart, we offer, right now it's free, but it's a pre-jump starter indicator with a KV coach. And this is just a 20 question deal that helps us refine some of those areas, those itches that you might have. And we can begin to just encourage you in such a way where there is almost a funnel or a pathway where you can begin to even consider certain ways that the Jumpstart might be that much more impacting for you. And then the core venture pathway, which is the longer process, 4 to 5 months with your peers as well as with a coach. That's right now looking like late May. And once again, that's 3 to 5 people per session. We might want to extend that, but at this point, it will be that number. And then the family strengths is just an opportunity as you might see fit. You want to learn more about it. You want to begin a process of being able to try it out and begin to get other family members involved. That's just something that we can begin to work out. We love the element of our rising gens being able to bring that into their families as well. So if you were actually an alumni of CORE and you're listening to this, please feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll empower you to be able to take that into your families as well. And if you're an advisor, we also have a process of kind of train the trainer, where this might be something that you want to be able to be trained in and take it and work with your families as well. So that's the opportunity right now, various ways that you can be in touch with us. I know there's a ton of questions, but that would be these would be the best ways to at least start to get a little bit of a understanding of what CORE could do for you.
Mark, I think that's a great segue. We've got several great questions here that I'd like to kind of feed to you and Maddie and let you guys go ahead and answer. Specifically with the family assessment, we have someone that asked, was it created by CORE or an outside assessment firm like Clifton Strengths?
Yeah, so that's been internal with a colleague, Andrew Doust. The model, many of you actually probably see the similarity in what Jay Hughes's model is. What we did is we've taken some of the frameworks that he started with, and we put it into something that's very familiar, especially with advisors. But it's strength-based. Once again, with the 76 questions, we're giving you a chance to be able just to reflect on a scaling of 1 to 10, where do you see the strengths of that particular issue, whether it be purpose or character or relational contribution, governance, whatever. And you can evolve that. There might be some pieces that you might not want to deal with all of those 5 different areas, or you might not want to deal with succession. But we can pick and choose and allow you to be able to customize what that experience could look like. But Andrew's got several tools that he's developed with us and for us, and that's where it was developed.
So we have several questions around, I'm going to say, what age, so first of all, ideal age for a rising gen to begin the process. Let's start with that one.
Okay. Yeah, so our target range is 21 to 35. The majority are typically between 21 and 27. And there's a reason for that that we figured out. The element of coming in when you're 21, there's the element of that separation. There's a neuroscience piece of it. There's a relational piece of it. There's also just an understanding what wealth all of a sudden, how it's defined, within those ages. It's not just college. It's not just career. But all of a sudden your brain to your mind starts to realize that there is something different as you're separating yourself from your family that you need to know more about. There's an emotional disconnection, especially with the wealth as well. I don't know how that's defining me, but I'm confused by it. So Katie and Maddie have gone through what we call the invisible companion, which is one of our first activities as you come in. And that gives you a quick snapshot of how this wealth is starting to define you and starting to give you some sense of the kind of questions you might want to ask. So 21 is a critical year for that. 25 to 27, and those of you that are familiar with some of the neurosciences and the framing of young minds, the women typically develop a lot faster than the men. So we do get a lot of we get a lot of women that are ready for the process fairly earlier than the men. So we always are real careful with the men that are coming into the process where connecting with authenticity or that emotional clarity or the emotional transparency is a little bit harder for them. So we're very careful about that. But 21 is a wonderful place to at least start thinking about it and being reflective and allowing that shaping to take place early. But we're also looking at some ways to inform and shape the 32 to 35-year-olds as well right now, which has been a request out there.
Maybe this question, maybe Maddie, will start with your perspective. I think the question kind of comes from two different angles of what works best in encouraging parents. So I think it's from an advisor, so their clients, to get their rising gens started in a program like this. Or maybe the flip side, if you're a rising gen, how do you come to your parents and say, hey, I'm interested in something like this, or I would like to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, being a parent now, it's apparent to me that I think all parents want their kids to thrive, right? And this definitely it's a mindset shift for maybe older generations that do feel like their kids just need more knowledge or literacy. And so Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think CORE is in a really a special position where they can connect you with families that have gone through CORE before, like myself, my parents, other participants, and that personal connection is actually really more powerful than any maybe website perusing of just really understanding, oh, I didn't think about the complexity in this way, because it is a mindset shift, I think, for some parents of, oh, my kids, I think would really, really benefit from this. And so feel free, I think if I could say, Mark, to reach out personally to Core Venture and to see even just a personal conversation with Mark or another staff member, or even maybe connecting to an alumni family would be really powerful. And then in terms of speaking to the rising gen, yeah, it takes an amount of confidence to be able to approach your parents and say, hey, I need this. But I think that speaks really powerfully to them of, it's a way that this is the reality of my life, and I want to take ownership of it. and this is the way in which I want to do it. I do think that speaks really powerfully to parents of and it's a respectful thing to do. So yeah, but it takes confidence. So I do feel for you, but maybe that would help, or just connecting to another alumni and gaining confidence through that way.
That's great, Maddie. What's fascinating too, what Maddie's saying is that there is a parent issue with some of the questions we ask them is that, what do you fear of losing and what do you want more of? And it's a wonderful question for a parent because you do the thing you fear losing is not necessarily the money or anything like that, but you do fear the elements of a lost relationship with your son or daughter. And wealth can create that kind of complexity. It can create the disconnect. And then the element of what do you want more of? Well, I want more relationship, deeper relationship. And with the Gen Zs, we're finding out that they even desire that more. There's the element of it not being necessarily there, but they don't necessarily know how to approach it. So that's another reason why we kind of looked at the family strength, because some of these conversations can begin to reveal some awareness around that. The other part for Rising Gen, the second part of your question, Katie, is that with a lot of times what we'll hear, and I don't know if Maddie said this at any time, but a Rising Gen coming into our process and then walking through even the first, whether it be a jump start or a kickstarter or into the pathway, what they'll typically say is, I didn't realize how much I really needed this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a real important part for those of you that are advisors, is that to be able to have some level of awareness to where that might actually be true. And speaking to that, I recognize the challenges that advisors are being asked these days with some of the new generations of like wealth 3.0 and the holistic element of family development, which has absolutely been huge for us, just because it gives us a broader way of being able to see how we can encourage the Rising Gen from the bottom up, and then also encourage the family relationship as well within that. So just recognize if you're a parent, recognize if you're a Rising Gen, as Maddie just said, and recognize if you're an advisor, there is the element of the unknown that perhaps walking through this experience couldn't hurt you at all. It can only help you, but maybe you'll be one of those folks at the end that just says, I didn't realize I needed this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that I would encourage or even kind of challenge, if you're sitting there thinking of your own Rising Gens, don't just assume that they're all dandy and everything's fine and they've had this wonderful experience growing up with wealth. And I think that giving space to, or having people that can kind of walk you through that conversation from a different lens, like core alumni can do, and people that have been through this can kind of help bring to light the true experience behind it all. I think I'll kind of go one last question here. Mark, can you clarify? So would the Jumpstart program be a good way to see if the Rising Gen is interested in the larger pathways? Is that kind of like the thought behind it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a chance just to be able for them to not necessarily have to make a massive commitment, but just begin to see how walking into that 6 to 8 hour starts a healing process as well as a clarity building process. And I know we're getting to the end, but if I had a chance just to say it to Maddie, what did that first 10 minutes of just being with other folks like yourself, what did that mean to you, Maddie?
Oh, yeah, life-changing. Absolutely.
Yeah, all of a sudden they have somebody that talks like them, has the same problems or concerns, as well as just is safe. They're accepting me, and I don't have to feel bad about it. So all of a sudden that authentic community, that authentic connection gets started. I forgot to put this up, Katie, but here's my contact information because I know that there's going to be more.
Yep. So for those that may be leaving or need to go, we'll stay on for just like 2 or 3 more minutes because I've got 2 good questions I think that you need to answer while we're still on here, Mark. But we are going to be sending out the recording in the next couple of days, along with a flyer with contact information about CORE. Of course, if you have any detailed questions around, I think I see some things about cost, advisors getting involved, or getting some train the trainer type experience, please reach out to us and we'll connect you to the right people. But you will hear from us with a recording and some information here. Mark, really quick, if you have a family with 150 rising gens, how do you start that process with them?
For doing the jump starting pathway.
Yeah, like who starts, kind of how do you encourage it? How do you kind of break that apart with that many people?
Believe it or not, I've actually thought about that. So it is a little bit, it's crazy, but we would approach it with insight of, creating a few champions that you think would embrace this. There's an element of rigor as well as excitement for jumping into this process. So if you have 150, I would love to talk to whomever that is, because we could put a strategy together for you. We would use also just the jump starter indicator, just to give you a sense of how some of those folks might be dealing with certain issues over other issues as well. It's not cryptic at all. It's a chance to be able to start realizing some of the barriers that folks might have. But what we would do is try to figure out the best way to create a champion group for you, and then like a concentric circle, build out the model. We would do multiple jump starts for you as well, and then find the best way to, either if you feel like there's a convergent opportunity, find some way to bring folks together in certain parts of the country or wherever you might be, and then take it to the next level. So we can customize the experience completely for a family like that.
And then what about in-laws joining the family that could still be in that kind of rising gen, but maybe they grew up with wealth of their own and their own experience, or maybe they didn't and they're completely new to it. How do you bring them into the picture?
Yeah, so we have had that, and we welcome it, just because they're part of that same story. They have a different story. So it's an element where they might not have grown up with it, but it is part of their life now. And so how do you begin to encourage, healthy dialogues around that? So they'll go through the same process as if I'm understanding the question properly, a spouse or somebody else through it all. But we want to make sure that there's that level of a bridging element between those types of relationships or spouses or partners, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be able to walk through it in the right way.
And to speak that too, I know in my personal family too, as more spouses join, there's a lot of power in spouses being able to, I don't know, relate to one another and kind of form their own support group in a way. And so I think the more that join, and the more that they realize that they're not alone in this new complexity of joining a family of wealth, that's super beneficial. So just to bring it to the light.
Let's see here. One more. Where would you say the core venture kind of fits in with other Rising Gen conferences or other programs put on by different institutions? Like, where does this kind of fit in that landscape?
That's a brilliant question. It's brilliant because the space is evolving and moving really, really quickly. So there are a lot of groups that are coming in and doing some wonderful work. The board, as well as just the team, we're a not-for-profit, so that gives us some freedom to stay fairly focused on what we really want to be and do. There's the financial literacy that's going out there, investment education and philanthropy education. Those we actually are working with other folks that are interested in our process, because it is tied to such a tight development metric and outcome based. So, we're trying to be very specific to that whole element of, how am I encouraging Maddie's, inner life, her inner purpose, the element of her inner identity, and then leading her to an element of impact. If that foundation, those anchors, will only help the educational priorities that a family might have, or an advisor or a family executive might want, for those rising gems coming up. But we're very specific to that foundation that gives them that strong sense of self and identity, and that can only blossom that much more in terms of, strength in their leadership as well.
So I think one last question from me, Maddie, what would you say, like what's next? Like, what's the ongoing journey now? Like, how do you continue to embody everything you've learned from core every day? I guess, like, so what's the future look like, and kind of embracing what core taught you and what you take from that?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Katie. I think honestly it goes back to the main takeaway that I mentioned before of continuing on this journey of life, right? There's gonna be going through core doesn't mean like I'm not gonna have any challenges anymore, but now it's that I know I'm not alone in it. So now it's raising a daughter who's gonna, have more means than her friends most likely. And how do I raise her well? Well, I have people, I can talk to now and glean wisdom from them. Or, as my family office and business changes and it evolves, I have, a closer relationship with my sisters and with my parents because of our involvement in core, and we're able to have more open communication. And so I think I just learned really foundational skills through core, whether it's through communication, knowing I'm not alone, or just a personal sense of autonomy and confidence. That will carry through my life no matter what challenge may arise now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mark, do you have any last words? Again, I do want to say, if anyone's interested, think you have a couple of rising gens that you want to encourage them. I think that Jumpstart coming up in April is a great way to do that. And those will be happening throughout the year too. So even if you don't think that April or May, just being in touch with core and kind of knowing and just showing interest in forming a Jumpstart would be great. So,
yeah, just, thank you, Katie, as well as Maddie, just for the chance. This is fun for us. It's just passion fulfilled. And hopefully there's folks out there that either are wanting for a rising gen or a family or whatever the case may be. And this is worth, an email or a phone call with us as well. We'd love to be able to do that. Don't hold back. There's plenty of ways that we can be able to get your answers, as well as just get you involved in what we're trying to do. Thank you also to the Trusted Family team, and just the chance for us to be able to be part of this. Also for the core alumni that are on this call, thank you for joining us as well. They're an extension of the team, and they're the Maddies that make us look good. So.
all right. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone who joined, and we will have that recording out to you within the next couple of days.